Good morning. I'm Dr. Maggie McMenamin, president of Union County College, and this is Inside the College. This episode of Inside the College, we're focusing on the Union County Prosecutor's Office, and my guest is the acting prosecutor of Union County, Grace Park. Welcome, Prosecutor Park.
Thank you.
It's terrific to have you here at Union County College. And I know you've visited before, but this is the first time you're going to take a little bit longer with us and tell us about yourself and maybe about the prosecutor's job.
Sure, absolutely.
So you're an attorney.
Yes,
and
I'm a lawyer.
We're an educational institution. So tell us, where'd you go to school? Where'd you go undergraduate? We want to learn more about you.
Well, I'm from California, so I went to a public institution. I went to University of California, Berkeley.
Oh, Berkeley.
And I got my BS in political science.
Did you always want to be a lawyer?
I did from probably a really young age, under 10. My grandfather was a police chief, so we had law enforcement in the family. My dad was a doctor, and he actually had always wanted to be a lawyer, and he told me that.
He wanted to be a lawyer, but he became a doctor?
Became a doctor because his
They're
family
like on
was...
two sides of the
table. His family was just so against it because my grandfather had such a hard time. He was a police chief on a small island off the coast of South Korea. Politics were really bad then, and died of a stroke at an early age, and it really influenced my dad's career choices. But he's always had an interest in law, watched C-SPAN constantly. He was that type of guy. And, we always talked about law and politics over the dinner table, and really got interested in just being a lawyer and the advocacy part. And I also had an interest in law enforcement. So, studied hard, worked hard.
And you majored in political science
Political science at Berkeley, and then went to Harvard Law School. Came out east.
Harvard as opposed to Yale? Should we get in that discussion, Harvard versus Yale?
I actually didn't get into Yale. I went to Harvard. And I really just came out here never thinking that I would stay, but I met my husband in law school.
Up in Boston?
Up in Boston. He was in business school up there. And we met, and he convinced me to come first to New York and then to New Jersey.
So you were seduced by your husband to move.
I came here for love.
From sunny California to New Jersey. Then when you graduated from Harvard, what was the plan career-wise? Was it to go into prosecutor's office, or what did you want to do?
So when I was in law school, I picked up a packet on how to go be a prosecutor. I mean, literally, that's what the packet said. And because I loved criminal law, I loved constitutional law, and I thought this is where I wanted to sort of practice this field. But it turns out it's really sort of immediately out of law school, sort of the best thing that we were advised to do was to go to a law firm and try to be the best litigator possible. So I went first to a big Wall Street firm called Cravath, Swaine & Moore. We represented a lot of sort of big clients like Xerox and other big companies.
Big corporate law firm.
Big corporate law firm. Went and basically tried to do the best job possible as a litigator, as a civil litigator, which basically means that you're doing, sort of corporate cases
and
for big companies.
And working 18 hours a day?
3,000 hours a year, which was
3,000?
basically, it was basically about that much.
Yeah, that's what I'm told.
Really learned how to be detail-oriented, work under a lot of pressure, and after a few years, I decided I really wanted to be in the courtroom, which is, at a law firm, it's very hard because the clients really want to hire the partner, the very, very senior person.
So you wanted to be in a criminal courtroom or in a civil courtroom or any courtroom?
At that point, I decided I really wanted to be in a criminal courtroom. Because not only, it wasn't just being a trial lawyer, I wanted to do something sort of meaningful and with some sense of mission. I'd sort of spent a couple of years just doing cases which were important, but were really about money at the end of the day. And I actually, before applying to a prosecutor's office, I went to be a law clerk for a judge, the federal district court, in front of Judge Walls, and here in Newark, New Jersey.
That's an important step in
It is an important
an
step.
attorney's career.
I think clerking for a judge, whether it be state or federal, really helps someone get sort of a bird's eye view of what it's like to be a lawyer in the courtroom. You understand what the the effective things are, to do before a judge, the ineffective things, and I really learned a lot about just the different types of law, because in a federal courtroom, you actually get to see patent cases, civil cases, criminal cases, and not only did I learn a lot, but Judge Walls is one of my biggest mentors today.
Well, I know a lot of our students have law school as their next step,
Right.
and they're thinking about getting into different types of law, and understanding this is pretty important to
Yeah.
them too. What did you do after you clerked?
So I clerked. I went back to Cravath for a year, and then I decided I'm going to start applying. And I applied to different U.S. attorneys' offices. And just to give everybody a sense of the difference between a state or county prosecutor's office and the U.S. attorney's office, the U.S. attorney's office basically prosecutes primarily criminal cases, but under federal laws. So
Is that more white-collar crime?
It is more white collar, so you get a lot of securities fraud, healthcare fraud, but you also get a lot of violent crimes, because the U.S. Attorney's Office will prosecute gang cases, different racketeering cases,
Sure.
mob cases. I mean, the historical
Organized
infamous
crime.
Organized crime cases were
Sure,
all
sure.
U.S. Attorney's Office cases.
Okay.
And so went there. I actually was hired by Governor Christie. I met him for the first time during my interviews.
When he was a U.S.
When
attorney.
he was U.S. attorney. He had been appointed about a year before I was hired. He said, "Why is a girl from California here applying to the U.S. Attorney's Office in New Jersey?" And I said, "I came here, my husband convinced me, and I love it, and I would
Good.
love to be a federal prosecutor." Got the job, was there for about 7 years, and I did everything from violent crimes to those gang cases to white collar, to investigating companies for healthcare fraud. And I didn't know whether or not I wanted to be a career prosecutor at about 7 years. So I started looking around, and I ended up going to Pfizer as in-house counsel, which is completely different in many ways.
So you left the U.S. Attorney's Office.
I left the U.S. Attorney's Office.
And went back inside
In-house.
counsel, not
Yeah.
corporate law, but corporate law as inside counsel.
Yeah, so oftentimes big companies have lawyers that work directly for them, and essentially those lawyers represent that company. But oftentimes you're working with outside counsel, those big law firms like Cravath, who you hire for some the big cases, and so that's essentially what I was doing at Pfizer. And then people don't believe me when I say it, but about 4 years down the road at Pfizer, I got a call from the governor saying, "Look, would love to have you here in Union County as the county prosecutor. Come back, serve your home county," because I live in Westfield, and that's what I did.
So this is really the fourth step in your career. First step, corporate at Cravath.
Law firm, yeah.
Then the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Right.
Then in-house counsel at Pfizer. And now you are the acting prosecutor in Union County.
Yeah.
What is the prosecutor's office? A lot of people don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's a great question. So the prosecutor's office is an office. There's 21 county prosecutors in New Jersey, each representing each county. And basically, in New Jersey, we're appointed. We're appointed by the governor and confirmed by the legislature. And we run offices of both lawyers and investigators. And those lawyers take cases that are investigated by our local police department. So you have, say, a burglary in Cranford, for instance, and that burglary would be investigated by the Cranford Police Department and then brought to our office for prosecution. So we would file the complaint, the allegation, and then we would take that case all the way from complaint to trial.
So that's not done at the local municipal level. That's done at the county level.
No. So the municipal department, the municipal courts, there are municipal courts. They deal with, if you get pulled over for speeding and, parking tickets and things like that. But our office deals with all what's called indictable crimes. So crimes that are serious and felonies.
Okay,
To
so
a
if
certain
it's just
level.
a summons, then it's local.
It depends on the type of summons.
Okay.
Some of the summons will deal with more serious, but the less serious the locals will deal with. Yeah.
Now, one last question on this issue. What's the difference between a prosecutor and a district attorney?
Really none. So the district attorneys, that term is used by certain states. For instance, our neighbor New York, all the, there's a Manhattan district attorney,
Right.
and for all the jurisdictions, they have district attorneys. We just happen to call ours county prosecutors. And the district attorneys in New York actually get elected, so that's a little bit of a difference. But I know that there are some states, I think, that have district attorneys who are appointed as
But
well.
it's the same job.
Same job.
So I'm aging myself now a little bit, but Hamilton Berger was the district attorney in
Right.
the Perry Mason
Right,
series.
right,
Okay,
right.
and that's the same
That's
thing.
the same job.
So you are our Hamilton Berger.
Exactly.
All right, good.
And we have about 70 Hamilton Burgers at our office.
Okay,
So
so
we have
they're-
assistant prosecutors.
Okay.
So I run an office of about 70 lawyers, and then about between 70 and 80 detectives. And the other thing we do, so the local departments will generally investigate most of the crimes. But there are certain crimes we find really should be investigated consistently by one entity. And so, for instance, homicides. If there's a death in the county, we have a homicide task force that's directly out of our office. So the detectives in our office investigate all the homicides
So
in
it's
the county.
prosecution and investigation.
Of certain crimes. So we'll do the most serious crimes in the county. It's homicides. We also investigate narcotics and gang cases. We investigate public corruption. So
Okay.
our special prosecutions unit does that. And then we also investigate our sexual assault cases of children directly.
So that's essentially like a special victims unit?
It's a special, that's exactly what we call it. It's a special victims unit. And they do all our child victim cases. And it's called the Child Advocacy Center in Elizabeth.
Absolutely, I know about it.
and
I
we
know
have
the great work that's done there.
Oh, it's great. I mean, we have detectives and attorneys out there, and we also have nurses and social workers, and it's a wraparound system out there at the Child Advocacy Center in Elizabeth. We do, when a child comes in, they don't come to a police station in Union County. They go to a house, and they get interviewed only once. And really, all that information is taken to be able to sort of holistically deal with that child from not only the prosecution, but also so the social work side.
So that minimizes the negative impact on the child
Yes.
from, they were traumatized with the incident to begin with, but that minimizes the trauma associated with the investigation.
Exactly.
Tell you what, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be
Sure.
right back. I'm Dr. Maggie McMenamin. This is Inside the College. My guest is the acting prosecutor for Union County, Grace Park. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Inside the College. I'm Dr. Maggie McMenamin, president of Union County College. My guest for this episode of Inside the College is the acting prosecutor of Union County, Grace Park. Welcome back, Grace Park. How are you?
Good.
Good. We want to ask you about some of your initiatives, some things that are going on in the county. And one thing that I hear a lot about, not just in Union County, but across New Jersey, and maybe it's an American issue, is the opioid epidemic. What's happening in Union County with regard to that?
Well, it's a real pressing issue across the state and nationwide. So first of all, sort of stepping back across the country, the number of opioid affiliated deaths has gone up fivefold over the last decade, which is crazy. It's now exceeded the number of deaths associated with car accidents. So it's the #1 cause of accidental death in the U.S. Sort of focusing on New Jersey, the number of deaths have sort of varied by county, and we've gone up somewhat, but not as much as some counties. Say Ocean and Monmouth, I know, are experiencing hundreds of deaths in their counties. Whereas, we've averaged around 40. Last year was about 55, and we're on pace for about that many this year as well. But we're really trying to stay ahead of the curve.
Can you give us just a little snippet? What's
Sure.
causing this? Why
Okay.
this all of a sudden?
Of course. So, essentially, when and I'll start out with sort of my career as a prosecutor a little bit. When I was an assistant U.S. attorney back in the early 2000s, the drug problem tended to be coke, coke and crack.
Right.
And it used to be an urban sort of lower income problem, basically inner city. And it sort of was isolated to that. And heroin was, you didn't see much of it. And we didn't actually seize a lot of it when I was a prosecutor then. Heroin has just now completely escalated as our priority drug issue here in the county.
Overcoming
and sort of
cocaine,
yeah, exactly.
crack, all of that.
We've seized about 25 kilos in the last 5 years, and here just in Union County.
Of heroin.
Of heroin. And the reason is the demand has increased so much. So, it starts out oftentimes with prescription drugs. So a lot of, and now it's become not just an urban problem, but it's now a suburban problem.
So I'm shoveling snow,
Right.
I hurt my back.
Right.
My doctor prescribes an opioid pain reliever.
Right.
And then I become an addict?
Well, so, not always, but that's one of the ways that people have become addicts. The other way is kids go into medicine cabinets.
So I hurt my back shoveling snow and I don't take my pills because I'm tough.
Right.
But my daughter takes the pills and becomes an addict.
Yeah, it's become a little bit more part of the culture among teens and sort of college age kids in terms, going to a party and taking prescription drugs as part of,
Instead of having a beer, having a
or-
keg party,
exactly,
they're having a
or shots.
prescription drug party?
Yeah. And it seems that the drug of choice these days is both marijuana and prescription drugs.
Oxycodone. I
Exactly.
mean, that's what I hear, that
The
it's oxy.
Percocet and oxys.
Percocet also.
And so what we also see, so we see kids abusing, and then we see adults eventually abusing, becoming addicted. And that pill tends to cost between $25 to $50 in the black market. So that becomes very expensive after a while because they're popping these pills and they need more and more. And heroin is essentially the same drug, but in just a more potent dose. And then they turn to the streets because heroin is about $5 a dose.
So if I want to continue to use my drug of choice, I have a choice to buy a $50 black market pill
Right,
of oxycodone
Right.
or a $5 bag of heroin.
exactly.
And how do I ingest the heroin?
So you're usually either snorting or injecting, depending on sort of what you're doing. Generally we see people with needles injecting at that point
So
because the
the
fastest way.
overdose, the deaths are from overdosing on the heroin?
Yes. So generally we had about 114 deaths over the last 4 or 5 years, the years that we've been keeping track, and it's essentially the vast majority, about 85-90%, are heroin or opioid related. So it's a pretty staggering number. Now what we're seeing is essentially the vast majority of deaths related to overdoses in Union County are heroin or opioid related.
Well, what about Narcan? I keep hearing about a drug called Narcan that can help with this.
So Narcan is an antidote that essentially reverses the impact of heroin.
So if I'm
of a heroin overdose.
overdosing
Right.
on heroin, or if
Right.
a young person is overdosing on heroin, Narcan is a drug that can be administered?
It administers and basically it reverses the impact. And I would say in last year, in 155 overdoses that we went and deployed Narcan, we saved 150 lives.
So that's in Union County?
In Union County.
Narcan was used 155 times.
Yes. Just by law enforcement. That's not even including EMS. So you can imagine the number of calls we get on overdoses with respect to heroin and opioid. And so what we did as a response was exactly that. We basically put Narcan in law enforcement's hands so that when they get to a scene, they could administer it immediately.
So police officers across Union County have Narcan at their disposal in the event they need to use it.
As of
That's
2 years
municipal
ago, yes.
police, not just the county police.
Right.
But municipal
All
police.
local police departments. And it's not just, it was my initiative, but we worked with local hospitals and they agreed to go ahead and equip local departments with Narcan for free.
I think I saw Trinitas was one of the leads in that initiative.
Exactly. Trinitas, RWJ, Overlook, all three have agreed, and they've really just come forward to to address this issue. And so, but unfortunately what we end up seeing is that the same people are overdosing, and just reviving them and saving their life doesn't really necessarily solve the problem.
So you're doing Narcan on one individual maybe 2 or 3 times.
Right. So the local departments are seeing the same people who are addicts overdosing. And so what we've done, the next sort of step in our initiative that we announced a few months ago, is we've developed a program involving recovery addiction specialists who are now being deployed to ERs. And this is really sort of by the initiative of the hospitals in coordination with law enforcement to get recovery specialists. And I know that Trinitas now has 2 recovery specialists on staff at this point. So if they get a Narcan deployment case, a person walks in the door having just been revived, they have a specialist who comes and tries to get that person to treatment.
To try to prevent them from relapsing. I know that Governor Christie has a new initiative now, and I think it's Reach NJ.
Right.
Is that the name of it?
Yes, it's Reach NJ, and basically he's, it covers a lot of things, but one of the things that he's really sort of pushing forward right now are these recovery addiction specialists.
We'll get
programs.
On the bottom part of your screen, you'll see the phone number and the website for that New Jersey initiative to reach out to help individuals who want to get treatment for addiction issues.
Right, and essentially it's a phone number, and it connects you to any sort of treatment resources that they can get you at the time. So you just have to call one number, and they'll get you the resources for
I
treatment.
understand in Union County we also have another initiative to help address this, and that is the medicine drops all over the county.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So that was part of this whole effort. As I talked about before, kids were going into medicine cabinets, and we even had real estate.
I know I have some medicine in my cabinet that's old.
Right. You may have 3-year-old Percocet from surgery 3 years ago, and it's susceptible to someone actually grabbing it and either
Well, I don't know what to do with it. Do you throw it in the garbage? Do you pour it down the toilet? What are we supposed to do with old medication?
So what you can do now is we have 10 Project Medicine Drop boxes all around the county. There's the closest one to Cranford, I think it's in Westfield, at the county building, and we also have one at the Westfield Police Department. And all you have to do, it's like a mailbox. You don't have to fill out any paperwork. No questions will be asked of you. You literally walk into the police station and put the medicine in a mailbox and walk out. It takes a minute.
Okay, and is that being heavily used in the county?
It is. We're getting lots and lots of
Good.
medicine.
So hopefully that'll help reduce the numbers of incidents where young people or anybody's getting access to prescription drugs by raiding somebody else's medicine chest.
Right.
Well, I hope that does work, because this opioid epidemic is frightening.
It is scary, and people should be scared and really motivated to
And
do
it can
something
happen to
about it.
anybody.
Exactly, and that's one of the things that I often talk about, the demographics. If you look at the overdose victims and the demographics of the county, they're almost exactly the same, both in race, age,
Socioeconomic status.
Socioeconomic status. It's amazing.
Equal opportunity horror, this opioid epidemic.
Yeah, and it's truly a tragedy. I think in this day and age, I think everyone knows someone who's
Yeah, I do, and it's heartbreaking for the parents, heartbreaking. Before we let you go, I want to talk about another, I think it's really a jewel of law enforcement in Union County, and that is our Crime Stoppers chapter. Yeah. And we'll have information at the bottom of the screen about Crime Stoppers and how to reach out to them. But could you give us maybe a thumbnail sketch of what is Crime Stoppers?
Sure. So Prosecutor Stamler, when he was prosecutor a few decades ago, he essentially found that, and it's the same dilemma that we have today, that our case is really suffering from the lack of witness cooperation. And it stemmed from from people who just didn't want to get involved. They don't want to go through the process of being interviewed and possibly testifying down the road, to people who were just adamantly against cooperating. And he thought of this idea saying, look, why don't we involve local business people who can sort of put together a pool of money and offer that as a reward for information that really leads to results in our cases.
So Crime Stoppers is a reward?
Yes. So basically, it's a board. It's a group of people, motivated people like you, who essentially volunteered to raise money and bring in money, and then we provide a hotline, a completely anonymous tip hotline, where people can call in to the number on the screen and essentially provide information for any investigation that we have. And we often run into the issue with respect to not having witnesses to the crime, providing information, and if that information leads to something, either a charge or some sort of conviction, the board then votes to reward that individual with some amount of money, and usually it's up to $5,000.
So the tip could be related to the crime itself. I witnessed a crime, and
Exactly.
this is what I saw. Or it could be related to, I saw the person you're looking for, a wanted criminal?
Yes, it's really anything that could help. We're really looking for any information. It may be that you saw a car that matched the description that we put out. It may be that you saw the individual. It may be that you heard something from someone else talking about it.
So, but you said this is totally anonymous. I don't have to
Completely
say my name when I call.
No, well, so basically you get a number when you call, and that number actually ultimately matches up to a reward at the end. And so we keep it completely anonymous. And people often ask me, is it truly anonymous? Yes, it is. We have to have it anonymous to maintain the credibility of the program.
So if I provide a tip that ends up helping law enforcement and I'm given a reward, how does an anonymous person pick up a reward?
So you give a tip, you get a number, and that number gets matched up to a number at a bank when they actually issue the reward.
So
you
I
get
take
instructions.
my number, I get an instruction to go into a particular bank,
And you
I
get
hand the teller the number, no questions asked.
Exactly. And I'll verify that I get reports on tips. I do never see an identity off these Crime Stopper tips. So
Does it work? Does this help?
It does. It does. The community's our eyes and ears. Law enforcement can't be everywhere.
That's right.
And we really need the community to sort of help us with these cases.
So Crime Stoppers really serves as a bridge to help it create
Definitely.
a partnership
Right.
with the community and law enforcement to make it a safer county.
Exactly. So, and the Crime Stoppers Board, really is made up of people, business people, people in education, all around the county who just really want to bridge that gap.
All right, and what kind of rewards are we talking about? I mean, is this like a $50 reward, or are we talking about big rewards, small rewards? Give me an idea of what it is.
Like I said, it was about, up to $5,000 is generally, and they're generally
Up to $5,000?
$5,000. And
That's a nice bonus.
And sometimes it's up to 10, depending on the type of case involved and how hard it is. And the Crime Stoppers Board has been very generous to people. It's generally in the thousands that they're rewarded.
Most rewards are in the thousands. So
Generally.
So it's a worthwhile thing, not just to make the community safer, but there is a real reward for individuals who are willing to
Yes.
step up and help.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
This has been a great episode of Inside the College. We focused on law enforcement and very particularly on the Union County Prosecutor's Office. My guest for this episode has been the acting prosecutor, Grace Park. We'll see you next month on Inside the College. Thank you.